the work just doesn't end in Vietnam. I think this is just the starting point for this foundation and the growth and the trajectory for this mission.
When they swore an oath to the Constitution and donned the cloth of our nation that we're going to do everything that we can to bring you home, and there's no expiration on that promise. We made a promise to them and their families when they swore an oath to the Constitution and donned the cloth of our nation that we're going to do everything that we can to bring you home, and there's no expiration on that promise. And so it's been too long, but when you look at those numbers, 58 plus MIA, Green Beret MIAs in Vietnam, and now less than 1,600 who are still missing. That's a pretty significant portion of the MIAs from that conflict, and it just shows, how much they influenced that war and that conflict, and how much they gave, and the importance of that sacrifice. And so we're excited about working together to provide some answers, bring these men back to the soil that they belong on, and then provide some comfort, some answers, and hopefully some healing and closure for those families that have waited too long.
Can you talk about the process? Because, the goal here is to take a team, go to Southeast Asia, whether it be, Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia, but it's been 50 years.
Yeah.
So it's not like let's just show up and, we're here to try to find an American who was killed in action and never brought home. What does that process look like?
Yeah, and 50 years seems like a daunting number, and it is, but it's not something that we haven't faced in the past. So we're still working on cases related to World War II. We were contacted by some folks that had some really good information related to some losses from the frontier wars in the mid-19th century. So I like to say that this work starts in the basement of an archive somewhere. We're building out these cases, but it's not just combing through files and things like that. It's doing interviews. And luckily, we still have a lot of these folks around that can provide some really, really good information, firsthand accounts, information and then we'll build those cases from that. And then that creates a search area or where we're going to look. But it's a snowball process or action research where you're consistently adding new data that emerges. And especially when you get into the field or you get into the countries where we work, more information tends to come out of the woodwork when people realize that you're not looking for treasure. It's treasure to us, but not gold. We're looking for people. And once people realize, hey, you're looking for somebody that's lost, there's this values overlap, and people tend to show up with valuable information. So we'll continue to add to that case and hopefully narrow down the search area where some of these folks are missing and search those areas thoroughly with boots on the ground, but also applying some of the most modern technology that we have available to us today and that we continue to develop that's going to have an impact on this. Things like environmental DNA resources where you can test soil to determine if somebody is located or buried nearby, which is a long conversation about how that science works. But then once you find those sites, doing a full excavation to cover any remains that we can, identifying them appropriately. And then from there, the process picks up as if they were killed in action the day before, and they'll be appropriately memorialized and celebrated when that takes place.
How does it work with the interaction with the host nation country? Because this is not a conflict zone.
Yeah, you just don't drop in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
U.S. doesn't hold authority over these places. There has to be some level of coordination.
Yeah, you can't do any of this work without the permission of the host nation. You can't just go to another country, start putting shovels in the ground and things like that. It's looked poorly upon, or you can do it, but there's a consequence, right? And a lot of work has taken place in Vietnam, and these are some of the hardest cases that are left. And so we will get the permission of the host nation. We'll also, let the Department of Defense know and the appropriate agencies on the United States side know, because there is some deconfliction that we want to make sure that we're doing. We're not replicating effort, but we're putting forth new effort, make sure that it's put forth the right way. But yes, this work cannot be accomplished without the support of the host nation. And I'll actually be in Vietnam next month, working with the Vietnamese, building out some of those relationships that we know that are going to help us advance this mission.
Yeah. Charlie, what are we looking at for a timeline on this? Because I've got to brief my crew here. For the first time.
Well, this is what I think makes this so incredible. Before I get to the timeline piece, is this gets to the core essence of what you Green Berets do, right? You embed in indigenous communities, you build relationships, you force multiply your network, you work together with host nations, you you gather intel, reconnaissance, understand the mission, and then you move forward out and you execute that mission. So we're looking at it from a foundation's perspective in that same similar fashion. Um, I'm often asked, by the board and by donors, what is the timeline? And the easy answer for me, which is I'm a big idea guy, I'm a dreamer, is there is no timeline. Like this is not just a transactional news media flash. This is what we're doing. Like my goal would be like we worked with Vietnam, Laos, and Cambodia, and we do everything we can until they're all brought home. So if that takes 10 years, great. If it takes 100 years, fine. We're going to do it. But there is some planning, some execution. It's certainly some time away from families. I mean, obviously, we're going to document it via documentary with the Jedburgh Media Channel so the American public can understand the importance of not only this mission, but the importance of Project Recover. Because what Derek hasn't also talked about, there are still hundreds of men and service members that were lost in conflict in the Second World War and in other conflicts that have not returned home. And so the work just doesn't end in Vietnam. I think this is just the starting point for this foundation and the growth and the trajectory for this mission.